Good morning, D-Day Squadron. This is your weather briefing for Sunday, May 19th. Debbie Sham and Dan Halpern with you this morning. Across the region, we're seeing some cloudiness today. These clouds are generally moving off to the east. Most of our stations are reporting VFR conditions across New England right now. So a lot of these clouds are above the VFR threshold here. There is some scattered precipitation across the region as well. This is our composite reflectivity, and we see the rain showers moving generally off to the east. This will continue throughout the day today, with some of the precipitation increasing in coverage. Our surface analysis shows that the feature responsible for the precipitation is an approaching warm front that will be moving through New England, so conditions are expected to deteriorate throughout the region today. And then tomorrow, the surface low that's offshore the Canadian Maritimes today will continue to push east into the northern Atlantic on Monday, and this could cause some issues with a potential flight from Goose Bay over to Reykjavik on Monday. The freezing levels currently are above 10,000 feet across Oxford. As we go toward departure time this morning, we find that the freezing levels are between 5,000 and 10,000 feet at Presque Isle, and then between the surface and 5,000 feet across Goose Bay. As we go throughout the day today, the freezing levels are forecast to increase throughout the day, such that the forecast 5,000 foot freezing level is just to the west of Goose Bay by 0Z on Monday. And then as we go into the overnight hours and during the day Monday, we find that the freezing levels between the surface and 5,000 feet from Goose Bay over to Reykjavik, with the freezing level down near the surface around Narsarsuaq. The forecast temperatures at 5,000 feet will be again above freezing between Oxford and Presque Isle. We will transition to temperatures below freezing at 5,000 feet between Presque Isle and Goose Bay, and then temperatures generally in the 20s for Monday between Goose Bay and Reykjavik. At 10,000 feet, we'll see some temperatures above freezing around Oxford, but getting to temperatures below freezing as you approach Presque Isle. And then north of Presque Isle, temperatures generally in the teens on the way to Goose Bay. And then from Goose Bay to Reykjavik on Monday, few single-digit temperatures, but temperatures generally in the teens along this segment as well. As we consider the icing potential at 5,000 feet, so on the segment from Oxford to Presque Isle, the freezing level will be above 5,000 feet. So even though we may see some cloudiness, some IFR conditions at that altitude, at least temperatures will be above freezing, so we're not concerned about icing at that altitude. As we move forward to midday today, about 16 Zulu, just north of Presque Isle, the freezing levels should also be above 5,000 feet with some moisture in the area. It appears that the recommended action would be to get to about the St. Lawrence River and then climb to about 10,000 feet where conditions should be a little bit drier, and we'll show you that next. But notice at 5,000 feet, as you cross the St. Lawrence River, we find temperatures that will be below freezing and then quite a bit of moisture content in the area of Goose Bay later on this afternoon. On Monday, there will be a considerable amount of moisture along in the North Atlantic from Goose Bay over to Reykjavik, so icing potential will be a concern on Monday. At 10,000 feet, again from Oxford to Presque Isle, there will be some cloudiness, potentially some IFR conditions. Freezing level is below 10,000 feet at Presque Isle, remember, so again that's why we're recommending that you stay below the freezing level between Oxford and Presque Isle. And then as we go into the midday hours today, again, once you get to the St. Lawrence River, conditions are drier at 10,000 feet from the St. Lawrence River up toward Goose Bay. So again, we're recommending that you would climb, once you get to the St. Lawrence River, climb up to near 10,000 feet to try to get into some drier air. And then once you approach Goose Bay, the recommended action would be to descend quickly to altitudes below the cloud base near Goose Bay to minimize your icing potential. As As we go into Monday, we will find that the threat of icing at 10,000 feet also exists from Goose Bay over to Reykjavik, so there will be some concerns. We'll talk more about Monday's flight in our afternoon outlook, but that is something to be aware of. There are some airmets active right now, so for 12Z we have an icing airmet out across parts of Maine. The base of the icing layer varying between 6,000 and 10,000 feet, the top of the icing layer at 20,000 feet. This area, this icing airmet, continues at 15 Zulu and moves a little bit farther to the north. Also continues at 18 Zulu and then by 21 Zulu just over northern Maine, but this does include the Presque Isle area throughout the day today. We're also concerned about low-level turbulence. So at 15 Zulu, there's an area of low-level turbulence, an airmet for low-level turbulence out between the surface and 8,000 feet across New England. At 18 Zulu, this area also persists. And at 21 Zulu, we see that expanding a little bit farther to the east. So low-level turbulence between surface and 8,000 feet, certainly a possibility today. And then low-level wind shear is possible across parts of New Hampshire and southern Maine, mainly around 18 Zulu and then into 21 Zulu today. So in summary, we have icing airmets out. Again, the base of the icing layer will vary between 6,000 and 10,000 feet. And then low-level turbulence between the surface and 8,000 feet, and then low-level wind shear across parts of New England from New Hampshire up towards southern Maine. Your forecast winds at 5,000 feet. So we likely see a quartering tailwind from the left here between Oxford and Presque Isle throughout your segment throughout that segment. And then the winds will be fairly light between Presque Isle and about the St. Lawrence River. And then we'll transition into a strengthening headwind or quartering headwind from the left as you approach Goose Bay this afternoon. And then on Monday, we're expecting mostly headwinds from Goose Bay up toward Narsisuik. At 10,000 feet, we have fairly strong winds, generally from the west, so a left crosswind from Oxford to Presque Isle. As we go throughout the day today, winds a little bit calmer from Presque Isle up toward the St. Lawrence, and then a strengthening left quartering headwind, or more of a direct headwind as you approach Goose Bay, and then a headwind also between Goose Bay and Narsisuik expected during the day on Monday. Your current weather depiction, again, most stations in New England reporting VFR conditions currently. As we go through the morning hours today, we'll find some MVFR and potentially some IFR conditions depending on where the precipitation is located. This is valid at 12Z. As we go forward into the afternoon hours, again, MVFR to IFR conditions in northern New England possible at 18Z, and then as we get into 0Z, notice that Goose Bay is expected to see MVFR conditions around 0Z tonight, and into the overnight hours, the conditions could degrade at Goose Bay, potentially going IFR during the overnight hours, Sunday night into Monday morning. Your turbulence forecast matches up well with the airmet for the low-level turbulence. So again, we're mostly concerned about turbulence between Oxford and Presque Isle. So here is your 12Z forecast. As we go forward into 18Z, we have a small area there of potentially moderate to severe turbulence forecast in eastern Maine. And then as we go into 0 Zulu, that threat of turbulence begins to decrease a bit. So in that area where the airmet was located is, again, where we're expecting the potential for turbulence along the route today. And then in terms of volcanic ash, none is forecast through the next 18 hours. So your surface winds at Presque Isle, calm this morning, and then getting an increasing southerly component to the wind by midday, so favoring runway 19 today. And that'll be true throughout the afternoon hours into the evening hours as well. And then as we go north to Goose Bay, we find a northerly wind here. that will that'll persist throughout the day today. So conditions generally favoring runway 34 at Goose Bay. That will be true throughout the daytime hours today and even into tomorrow morning. So we'll talk more about the potential about the weather for Monday's flight, but if you do take off Monday morning, again, winds generally favoring runway 34 at Goose Bay. So your forecast for today, if we look at the TAFs here in the Oxford area, notice that there are temporary conditions out around the time of departure for ceilings down at 3,500 feet. And then as we look toward Presque Isle, we find that starting at 16 Zulu, the ceilings are expected to lower there to 3,500 feet with vicinity showers. And then as the day goes on at Presque Isle, the ceilings continue to lower and precipitation continues to be in the forecast. On the Oxford to Presque Isle segment, as we were saying, the recommended action is to fly below the freezing level. Of course, be aware of the terrain along that segment. Mount Katahdin, for example, has an elevation near about 5,300 feet. In Goose Bay, the forecast conditions starting at 12Z is for a ceiling at about 2,000 feet. This is expected to persist throughout the TAF period, which goes through the evening hours tonight and into the overnight hours into early Monday morning. So we are concerned about low ceilings in Goose Bay and the threat of low-level icing, because your icing conditions will likely start at your cloud bases. We're expecting decent visibility, though, greater than 6 statute miles. The next TAF is forecast to be out at 12 Zulu. If the conditions change, if the forecast conditions change for Goose Bay, we will contact you and let you know. Otherwise, we will have an outlook for you for Monday's weather when you arrive in Goose Bay later today. Have a safe flight.